Hello and welcome to another track guide for the US Open Wheel B series, racing with the Dallara IR-18, and this week we'll be visiting Monza in Italy. Monza is a pretty straightforward track, as you can imagine. We have about a couple of chicanes and then very big straights, so very important to have lower downforce in the car if you want to do some passing during the race. And the race distance is not too critical either. We have 28 laps, which should be pretty easy to complete in a single stop. And taking care of the tires will be more important than anything else this week, as it seems. As per usual, we'll start with a full lap replay, and then moving on, we'll discuss setup changes I made for this week, and then we'll go for the full track guide, and finally strategy options and passing opportunities, that kind of stuff, right? So let's start. Alright, so in terms of setup changes, I thought to do something different this time, because every time I open up the iRacing set and try remaking the changes that I made in the first place, but sometimes I forget something and then I have to edit the video or do something else. So I figured out, you know what, I'll just use a program that's specific for this purpose, and in this case I've got iRacing Setup Differ here. Basically you just open up the simulator, and then at first I loaded up the iRacing default setup, which is setup number 1. To your left, and then I loaded up my quali setup, which is linked in the description down below, and that's our setup number 2. So as per usual, the setup I'm giving you guys is a quali set. The main change between the quali set and the race set is really just the fuel. I don't do many adjustments in terms of ride height and spring relation to the suspension, any kind of jazz. So yeah, basically all you gotta do is just grab the quali set, put 70 liters in, and then you were good to go. In terms of changes, I reduced tire pressures on front and left tires. I'm not really sure why the pressures are they are in the iRacing set. Well, in any case, I thought that the lower pressures were faster. In terms of wing angle, I didn't fiddle with the rear angle, which maybe you could, to be honest. If you do some experimentation, you'll see that maybe a little bit of higher wing angle on the rear can make Curva Parabolica, which is the last turn of the circuit, a bit faster. You can carry more speed, but on the flip side you have more drag, and thus you have less speed on the straights, which can be very detrimental in Monza, especially because you have so many straights and you have so many opportunities to be passed if you have higher downforce in your car. In any case, I thought that the front wing angle, which is the highlighted line, as you can see, this one, I bumped it up from 8 degrees to 11 degrees. That's about 43% front downforce bias. You can, if you're good at oversteer, you can even bump that a little bit further. And the reason for that is for the fast sweeping corners, which is basically Variante Ascari, which is the last chicane, and Curva Parabolica. Those two really benefit for you having a bit of a pointier car, and actually doing the corner faster than just dragging along and waiting for the understeer to be over with. And so yeah, if you can muster, you could even bump this up to like 44% front downforce bias. Okay, brake pressure bias, I bumped it down to 55%, 55.5. This is very manageable in my opinion. And the first chicane, which is turn 1, it's called, I think, Variante del Rettifiglio, if I'm not mistaken. This is a very Americanized pronunciation. I'm not Italian, but I guess it would be Variante del Rettifiglio or something like that. Maybe that was a bit too Spanish, but anyway. In that first turn, maybe you want to bump down the brake bias a little bit, so maybe 55.2, even 59, or 54.9 maybe, because you are doing a very heavy braking. You are doing very heavy braking in that case, and absolutely straight. And so the more rear brake bias you have, the shorter the distance you need to do. So if you have an easy way in your wheel to fiddle with your brake pressure bias during the lap, I guess I would bump it down a little bit for turn 1 and then bump it up once again to 55.5 during the rest of the lap. You may think, well, why not do it on the second chicane also, but I found that there's a bit of a bump that throws the car to the right, and it was messing me up a little bit there, and so the more front-oriented brake bias made me do less mistakes there. Alright, you'll see that there's a bunch of incidental differences here. These are not things that I made myself, this is just a product of the lesser fuel load in the car. And so you can ignore all of this, alright? I didn't actually change these things. What did I actually change here? Obviously I changed the fuel level from 70 liters to 10.5 liters. And you may be asking, hang on a second, that's only enough for a single lap. And to that I say yes, that is only enough for a single lap. And why is that? It's because the degradation of the soft tire, or the alternate tire, if you will, is extremely high. And so the second lap, even in qualifying, you basically don't have a shot of being your first lap at all, because the tire is already sliding a little bit, not too much. But my opinion is that you basically go out of the pits, you do a slow out lap, not too slow that you get black flag, but still not too fast that you actually start working the tires. And then you do a single quali lap, and hopefully you get a good time. If for some reason you make a mistake, let's say you have an off track, or let's say you botch a corner and lose a lot of time, what I would do in that case would be just to reset the car and then do another out lap and then another attempt. But basically trying to do a single out lap and then 2 flying laps, your second lap won't beat the first, there's no shot. Right? So this is the reason why you have so little fuel here, because really there's no point in trying a second lap. Let's see what else. Front and rear bar blades, I'm bumping up from 2 to 6, and I'm bumping down the rear blade from 4 to 1. This is the part I did most experimentation with, and really I found that like having a softer front and basically giving more grip to the front of the car was a more beneficial strat, especially in the slower corners. And so the car basically turns a little bit faster and you get more rotation out of that. And so you can experiment here, maybe 5-1 or maybe 5-2, but I wouldn't flip it around. In the default setup you have 2 on the front and 4 in the back, and I found that to be very stiff, and the car was having some trouble, especially with the second chicane. And finally, and this is a very important change in my opinion, is changing the ramp angle. This is the third and final, actually I think the fourth, right? Yeah, it's the fourth and final tab. So changing the ramp angle from 45-75 to something that has 30 at the end. Alright, so it can be 60-30, it can be 45-30, it can be whatever you want. But basically you want the lowest on power here, because this is the ramp angle when you are actually accelerating, not coasting. And once the tires get once the tires get degraded, especially the alternate tire on turn 1 and a little bit on the second chicane, it gets very, very difficult to put the power down and not spin out the car. And so critically you want this to be as tame as possible. Alright, there's one final change that is not shown here, but basically the fuel map, you can do the qualifying lap with 1, and I would do the race on 6, because really want that gentler curve for the throttle curve, so you can reduce the probability that you're gonna spin out when you are putting the power down. And so really, especially managing the soft tires will be a challenge this week for sure. And so you have to learn and be very gentle with throttle application so you don't end up facing the wrong direction. All right, so moving on to the track guide now. So we're here in the main straight, obviously. We're gonna accelerate barreling down the main straight towards turn 1, called Variante del Retifilho, as previously mentioned. Okay, my mouse is here. All right, so this is basically what you're looking at. This is a quality run, so I think 125 here, in between 150, 100, you can go onto the brakes. If we're talking full fuel loads, then back it up a little bit. I wouldn't say 150. 150 is a bit too conservative, but 140, like this blue cone as well, is like a good measure. So you could maybe go halfway between the blue cone and 150 here. So as you can see, I'm approaching. Take a look above here, so you can see when I go onto the brakes, which is about, let's see now, yeah. So yeah, about 125, looking from the outside here. Yeah, I just started braking. Look, should be the case, right? In between the 150, 100 board. And so going back into cockpit cam, there is this AstroTurf, well, this painted tarmac here. You can aim for it with your left wheels, or maybe you don't need necessarily to go there. Just go parallel to the white line. It's very critical, right? You absolutely want to maximize track width here as much as possible. You're going hard into the brakes, so if you look here, we're gonna go even up to 100% braking, and then as the speed of the car decreases, then you have less downforce, and thus you have to bleed off the brakes a little bit. And so I open up here a little bit, and then we're looking, you have to move your view towards this point, all right? So make sure that you don't fixate on your braking here and forget completely that the apex exists. So actually move your head and start looking here. And so in terms of positioning of the car, this is not the best turn 1 I've made. Ideally, you want your left side tire should go over this white line here. All right, so let's see here in chase. Let's do chase. Actually, this is pretty good. I could maybe be a little bit, maybe a tire width to the left here. But basically, you want your left side tire should be on top of this white line here. Cutting as much as possible as you want, because you want to have the car very settled and pointed so you can start accelerating as soon as possible here. All right, then moving on. You're gonna turn the wheel. This is a very intense turning. As you can see, this is way past 90 degrees here. So make sure you don't skimp on turning here. And what's critical here is the sausage curve here. You absolutely 100% do not want to go over the sausage curve. It's gonna unsettle the car terribly, and more often than not you spin out. So yeah, avoid it at all costs. As you can see, I barely touched it. So it kind of upset the car a little bit, but not too much. So that is fine. And now you want to look as soon as possible, you want to start accelerating. You want your right side tire to be on top of this curb here. And well, this is the first lap on this soft tire, so I still have plenty of grip. But as the stint progresses, especially with the alternate or soft compound, you see that the degradation on the rear tires will be significant. And so if you attack the throttle way too fast, you probably will spin out. So really, you want to make sure that your wheel is as straight as possible before you start accelerating proper, right? So yeah, very, very careful getting on power here. And yeah, I'm controlling some oversteer here. So let's see the section in chase cam. All right, now flat out until the next corner. Right, so if I'm not mistaken, this is Variante della Roggia, I think. Right, so this is our second chicane. And approaching here, you see that there is this access road here, right? So this is a good reference point for you. And quality trim with less fuel load on the car. You can aim to brake somewhere between the 100 board and the access road. So let's say about here where I'm pointing the mouse, right? But with a full tank, for sure, you want to back this up right about at the beginning of the access road, right? In terms of brake bias, I mentioned this briefly during the setup phase of the video, but basically you want to bring your brake bias on the previous corner, which is turn 1, down a couple notches, maybe 1 or 2 notches. I would say 55.2% is what I was using. I experimented with 54.9 as well, but I got a little bit too much rotation. And then I'll bring it up right about here, right? So when I'm in 6th gear and coming up to the corner, I'll bring it up 1 or 2 clicks, so 55.5 or 55.8 or 9, I think. And then that will bring it forwards a little bit. And then, as you can see, we're starting to brake right about now in quality trim, all right? But if this was a race load, I would go right about here. And then braking hard from 6th to 1st. You can go on top of this curb, not necessary, but you can try. And then what's critical is that you want your left side tire to go on top of this curb here, cutting it as much as possible. You have to be very careful to not have the tire actually on top of this grass anywhere. If you do, then you get a nasty slowdown, about 1.5 seconds slowdown, which is going to absolutely not only destroy your lap time, probably make sure you lose a couple positions there. If you do that on lap 1, like your race is over, you're going to lose a lot of time. Yeah, but right now, I think I'm good. Let's see. Yeah, pretty far from the grass, no problem at all. The car is going to bounce around a lot here, so you have to be really patient on throttle. Once the car is a bit settled after jumping here, you can go on power a little bit. You can see I'm going to up my acceleration a little bit here, not up to about 50% or so. And then once again, you want to avoid the sausage curb as much as possible and have your eyes peeled for the exit here. And so you can start accelerating pretty early here. And if your left side tire goes on top of the gravel a little bit, you don't actually get an off track. So you can try and push your luck here, but not too much, because otherwise you're going to have some spin action. So yeah, careful there. All right, so let's see this in chase cam now. Okay, now coming up to the Lesmos, Lesmo 1 and Lesmo 2. Lesmo 1 is kind of hard to describe, to be honest, because there's not many indicators here. I kind of go by sound, so I'll go up to 3rd and then 4th gear. As soon as I go into 4th gear, I know it's time to brake, so I kind of use the 4th gear upshift as an indicator of when I need to actually take the corner, which not always works out, because sometimes you get a worse exit speed and then it takes longer to go into 4th gear, and thus you are way too late into the brakes. But if you have if the sun is in the correct spot and everything, you can use this shadow here that's being cast by this tree, and I have my mouse over. This would be a good reference point for braking and going into the corner. However, you could have a cloudy day or something different, and then you wouldn't have the shadow, and so you can't rely too much on shadows to use as reference markers. Right, that said, I'm gonna get right about, let's see, is it? Yeah, it's the shadow, as you can see, right? So as I go over the shadow, you see that my brakes go on right here. It's not too much braking, I guess about 50% or so, and then you downshift from 4th to 3rd. Depending if you don't actually manage to get your 4th gear, then you can just stay in 3rd all the way. And then basically want to trail the brakes very, very lightly. You can check it here or on top there on the Race Lab advanced panel. And I'm just trailing the brakes and waiting for the car to do the corner. And then once you see this access road right here, this is your cue to start accelerating. But once again, don't attack the throttle way too much, because it's very easy to get an off track. And yeah. All right, so this is level 1. Very careful if your left tire goes onto the gravel here, that's an instant off track. And furthermore, very, very easy to, if your rear tires go over it and you actually accelerate, your car is going to spin out to the right here and you're going to end up right on the spot here that I'm marking. I ended up there plenty of times during training and during practice, and so careful there. All right, so we're coming up to level 2. This one is easier because you have these 2 boards, all right? So it's about 75. So in between the 150 board, you're gonna downshift from 4th to 3rd to 2nd. You don't actually need to go into 2nd gear. I like going to 2nd because I kind of force some rotation into the car, and so it makes it easier to do level 2. And in this particular lap here, I kind of went on top of the curb here, which unsettled the car a little bit. I had to wait to go and actually go into power. And this lost me about a tenth or two here. So ideally you want your right side tire should be on this lower part of the curb here, right? Not on top of it necessarily. And then you have to keep your eyes peeled. Once you see that you have enough grip to start accelerating, then you do. And then there you go. I kind of used the track a little bit badly here. Lost a little bit of time, to be honest. Could be a bit of a faster lap. You can go all the way to the left here. Just make sure your left side tires don't touch the gravel, and that's not going to be an off track. Unlike level 1, it's very hard to actually lose grip here and just go into the wall, and so you can be a bit more aggressive on this corner exit than on the previous one. And then, yeah, this takes us to the straight going to Ascari. So let's see the section in chase camera now. All right, so, well, this is pretty easily flat, obviously. Okay, coming up to Variante Ascari. Once again, you have kind of the same setup. So what ended up happening with me during practice is that I would confuse this corner with Variante della Roggia, which is the second chicane, and sometimes I'll try taking that corner in 3rd gear, which is what's going to happen here. And so I have to be very focused during the race so you don't accidentally space out and like start confusing the corners, because the setup is exactly the same. You're going to have an exit road and a 100-meter marker, and just like the previous case, in quali setting, you want to start braking right about in between the end of the access road and the 100-meter board, so somewhere around here. You can even push it up to the 100-meter board if you'd like. With a full tank, then I would back it up to maybe the access road itself, the beginning of it or the middle of it, somewhere around here. You're going to downshift from 6th into 3rd gear. So 1, 2, 3, and then you want to start taking this left-hander. You want to basically ride the curb as much as you can. You can even go a little bit on top of the sausage curb. It's a bit weird. I thought the car would be very unsettled by it, but not really. It takes the sausage curb surprisingly well. I wouldn't do it every lap, to be honest with you, but if it ends up happening, it's no big deal. So then you start accelerating. Once you're past that corner, you're going to do your right-hander here. Once again, you can go on top of this curb. This one's a bit trickier. I got some spins here. And so, yeah, maybe not too aggressive on power so the car doesn't spin out to the right, which happened to me a couple times. So basically, I'm just doing throttle control all the way here. Don't try and just mash the throttle, because most likely you're gonna have a car that's going to be very difficult to control in this section. And then towards the final left-hander, once again, you can climb on top of the sausage curb a little bit. Don't overdo it. And then I'm in 3rd gear here. If you want to settle the car, especially in race conditions, you could short shift to 4th before the curb here, so you have less torque and thus less likelihood to lose the car. And basically, if you don't want an off track here, all you gotta do is make sure that your right side tires don't go over the grass or the gravel on this part. But you can use the AstroTurf as much as you want, no problem. And then once you're past here, you can use the access road pretty much however you'd like. I mean, don't go all the way to the right here, but otherwise you can go over the line, no problem at all. So let's see the section in chase cam now. Well, let me back it up a bit more. This was very close to being an off track, man. Yeah, very, very close. If your tires even so much as touch the grass, that's an off track, so careful there. All right, so coming up to the final corner, curva parabólica. Now let's see. I'm going to cockpit cam. Right, so you want to open up the corner as much as possible, as per usual. There is this concrete patch here or something. That's a very good indicator. So in quali pace or in quali load, I would use the end of the concrete patch as my reference point. If I have a fuel tank, I have a full tank, and I'm starting the stint, or I have cold tires or whatever, I'll back it up to maybe the middle of the concrete patch, so right about here, or maybe 75% more realistically, something like here as my mouse is pointing out. And then we're gonna go somewhat hard into the brakes, surprisingly so, about 80%, and then you downshift from 6th to 3rd, and you wanna hug this curb as much as possible. Don't actually go on top of the curb. It's very easy to like lose the back end here, spin out to the right if that happens, so careful. And then there's this lamppost here. This is a good reference, all right? So once the car goes past the lamppost, basically when the lamppost moves out of your, or very close actually, to the right side tire here, or out of your view rather, then you can start getting onto the power. And this is one of those cases where you basically have to judge how much power you're using and how much understeer you're getting. So maybe you go 90%, 100%, and you kind of know this, all right, if I keep going, I'm gonna end up on the gravel there. Then you ease off a little bit of the throttle. Ideally, obviously, you wanna go onto the power and never let go. That's the ideal scenario, but not always possible, especially during a race condition, right? You're gonna make a mistake here or there, unavoidable. In terms of off track, you don't want the middle of the car to go past the white line. That would be an off track, but up until that point you can do it. And then try to use all the available grip and make the corner as short as possible. All right, one final note here, the pitch entry is right here, all right? So very, very easy to overdo it and then end up getting black flagged. So it's kind of a hard balancing act for you to make your pit entry as fast as possible, but also not actually getting black flagged here, because you come up to the pit straight obviously super fast. Right, let's see this final section in chase cam now. All right, that's a lap. That was kind of not too close to the apex, as you saw. Could a little bit closer. Let's get a wider FOV here so I can show you the lap time. It's a 30.71, 7:15 if I'm not mistaken. So pretty good lap, I would say. I'm really pleased with the set this week. I think it's really fast, and so yeah, I think we'll have a good time for sure using the set this week in Monza. All right, so that was the track guide for Monza with the Dallara IR-18 this week. And so in terms of strategy, you will notice that we need to do 28 laps for a full race distance this week. In terms of fuel consumption, it's about 4.6, 4.7 using fuel map 1 or 6, depending on what you feel more comfortable with. And this turns out that you can basically just about do 14 laps with a full fuel tank, which obviously would make it a definite one-stopper. There's a very slight problem with that, is that the soft compound tires, the alternate tires, they go off in a single lap, maybe two if you're lucky. But after that, you basically have 12 laps where you just holiday on ice, just sliding all around. And it's very hard to control the car, especially on turn 1. And so I've got countless spins there during long stints. So my strategy for you this week, it's like this. The fastest way to go about it is to just do a single stop. You're going to do one full stint with soft tires, one full stint with hard tires, or however you like. If you would like to start from the pits, because obviously it's Monza, and so you know how famous Monza is for its turn one shenanigans. And so maybe you're starting out, 7th, 8th, and you think, well, maybe these guys are going to rear-end me. I wouldn't falter you for a single second if you wanted to start from the pits and avoiding all that confusion. If you're doing that, man, who cares? You can start with soft tires, hard tires, doesn't matter. If you're starting from the grid, I guess I would recommend you start with soft tires because they're about 2 seconds a lap faster during the first 2 laps of the stint. You can pull like easily 31s, whereas with the hard compound you're going to pull about 33s usually. And so yeah, these 2 seconds, about like 4-5 seconds at the beginning of the stint, what's going to happen is that you're going to basically get swallowed by the grid, and you're going to have to make up all those positions if you start with the hard compound. And so yeah, maybe something to have in mind. If you start from the grid, personally I would recommend you start with the soft compound. That said, I had quite a few offs with the soft compound, even trying to be as careful as I could. So there's an alternate strategy here, which is this. Maybe you foresee that, man, there's no way I'm for sure going to make a mistake using the soft tire. I can't do it. Okay, what you could do is this. You start the race with the soft compound. Let's assume you do that. And then you do 1 or 2 laps, and then you immediately go to the pits and put on the hard compound. And then once that goes through, then you do another pit stop and you put the hard compound once again. You're going to have a very controllable car, a very safe race. You're going to lose right about 26 seconds total to do that strategy. And so with this, a significant amount of time. Don't get me wrong, you can't just go about and throw 26 seconds away and expect to get the same results. That's not going to happen. However, if you find yourself making mistakes during the race, like, man, I'm trying really hard to do a full stint on the softs and I always end up spinning out or crashing or whatever, I guess it's way better to just lose 26 seconds than crash out of the race, right? And so that's my stance on it. So if you feel more comfortable riding with the hard compound, which in my experience they're actually faster than the soft compound over a full stint, about half a second a lap faster, it was what I found with my tests. But half a second a lap faster is not enough to counteract the time you lose with the additional pit stop, right? So yeah, maybe try it out, try a full stint with the softs. If you can manage it, great, it's the faster strategy. If you can't, like, don't sweat it, just do 2 full stints with the hard compound, or do a single lap or maybe 2 laps with the soft compound, and that's that. Just have fun and finish the race, that's what's important. In terms of passing opportunities, well, I guess you don't need me to say it, but there is no shortage of straights or everything here in Monza, so it's really easy. I think that the main straight obviously is the best bet you have. You just use your push-up pass. Everybody and their mother is going to be using their push-up pass there, right? So it's not like this novel idea where you're going to use the push-up pass and the guy that you're trying to pass is not actually going to do it, but there's a bunch of draft as well. And so not that hard to pass on this track. Failing that, you obviously can also use the straight right after Lesmo 2, going up to Variante Ascari. That would be another good spot to use your push-up pass. Ascari is not the best corner to do side-by-side, if I'm honest with you, so try and get the pass done before you get to that corner. And finally, you can also do the same on the run to Parabolica. That straight is a little bit shorter, and so unless the guy up front makes a mistake or something, maybe you're not going to get that much of a run, and then you're going to have to do Parabolica side by side. And even if you make the pass, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be right on your tail on the main straight. They're going to use your push-up pass, draft you, and then you're going to have to fight for the position all over again on turn 1. And so personally, I would avoid trying to pass anyone before Parabolica, just setting up the pass for the main straight. I guess it's the best option there. All right. I think Monza is a really fun track. It's not the most complex track by any stretch. It's not an easy track though, which is kind of ironic considering that there are so few corners, but turns out pretty complex. And yeah, Monza usually has very good participation, so I think it's going to be a packed week. If you want to race even in European time zones, I guess it's going to be possible. And I'll see you guys on track. It's going to be a great week.